Thanks, Amanda. So I'm going to start with introductions. My name is Ross Babnick, the Research Administration Team Lead for the Vice Chancellor for Research. We have, we'll obviously go over our structure, and I'll introduce Yana because her voice isn't quite working today. Yana Biblin, the Director of Research Administration, and Sam and Lamont, you can introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Sam Wilson, the Team Lead for Chef Center.
Hi, I'm Amanda Stockton. I'm the team lead for Inference IE and Institute Laboratory.
Awesome. So today we're going to go over our service center, what we are, and our history, some of the model tenets that we use to develop our service center, our inventory of activities that we provide as a research administration service center, the organization and service models that we have, our governance model to maintain our services are good for our clients, service level agreements that we issue with our clients to make sure that they understand everything. Some tools we use, our cost model, because obviously we're paid staff, we cost money, and we then charge that to our clients. And then some lessons learned and challenges that we face along the way with this. And then obviously we want you guys to ask as many questions, hopefully to help you develop like similar services in your department. Oh my gosh. Overview and history. Well, I completely did not add that slide, so I'm just going to talk about it. Sorry. So we were an initiative from the Office of Vice Chancellor for Research to help departments that were struggling with research administration. So as a new service delivery for providing the support, removing us directly from the department. So the department did not have ownership of us. We were just providing services to them. It's focused on finance and research admin only, and it develops a long-term solution versus departments having turnover and constantly having to worry about that. It's more on the ownership of OVCR. Our mission is to support the university's research goals through providing excellent delivery of research administration, support to PIs, research teams, departments, and the entire university. We are the Research Administration Service Center, or RASC. It helps faculties and principal investigators focus on research efforts by providing customized administrative and management support for research proposals, grants, awards, and contracts. And then now we're going to talk about model tenets. When we were building this, we were trying to focus on specific things that we need to implement and kind of build the cornerstone for our research administration service center. So we focus on the needs of PIs and centers by doing listening sessions, seeing what they need from research administrators. And we also redesign processes and practices in order to best meet those needs. So we reviewed several reporting mechanisms, workflow tools, all types of different things to make sure that we were using the best for the services we were going to be providing. We also have consistent tools and trainings. So everyone in our service center receives the same tools that they give out to other departments, that they use in their research administration. All PIs have one point of contact, that's our research administrator. So they know if I have a problem with my grant, I go to this person. And this also, the service center has allowed us to establish job satisfaction by having professional and personal development and career goals, which isn't always achievable in a department setting. So we, part of developing a service center, you want to identify your in-scope activities. So what we did is we broke down the exact pre-award activities and post-award activities that departments in OVCR were struggling with being consistent and quality work. So we got this list. I'm not going to go over everything because I believe all of you can read, and these slides are available or will be available. But you want to look at what your department needs to determine your in-scope activities, specifically under pre and post-award activities. Our organizational model is set up to where we have a director of research admin, which is Yana. Then we have a operations team. Those are the people that do all of the processing. So our RAs, our research administrators, can focus on grant management, reporting, budget development, those things that the PIs need more expertise and not processing vouchers or journal entries. Then we have a triage team or floater, I should know what that says, floater team, where we have, they help assess gaps in service. So for instance, an RA is out on vacation for 2 weeks. A floater can then step in that position and help them out, which isn't something always available in a department setting. And then we have our research administration team leads, which have RAs under them. The RAs are the face of the department. The research administration team leads are those helping them to provide services to departments. And then our service center model is we have our PIs on the left there, and then they submit requests to us through a workflow tool, which we'll go over in a second. And then they have their single point of contact, their research administrator, and then behind the scenes, that research operator is then doing the processing. And I know I'm going kind of fast, so I apologize. Another key thing that we wanted to develop to ensure that we're providing quality service and we're not, and meeting the needs of our clients is we wanted to have a governance model. So our governance model is comprised of clients throughout the service center, directors, PIs, as well as us. So we come collaboratively and work together to redefine goals and performance metrics, develop, refine service level agreements, design, refine feedback mechanisms, like customer surveys, things like that. We review performance and identify service gaps, things that in the service level agreement we may not have indicated as a covered activity. And then we also evaluate the entire governance process. And all of that starts by identifying key stakeholders. Let's go. All right, so the Governance Service Center allows us to provide accountability, client input, again, service gap identification, transparency to the clients in developing those, identify areas for continuous improvement, because as we all know, research admin is ever changing and we can always continue to improve, and identify areas for prioritizing investments. So if we see there isn't necessarily a need, but it's a want that we have, we can identify those areas that we can do. And again, necessary input for successful governance is committee comprised of clients and providers, consistent meetings and reviews. So we have quarterly meetings with our governance committee. We also have customer satisfaction surveys that we do to see how well we're doing, if there's any concerns from our clients that maybe they want to do anonymous, things like that. Okay, so a key component of a service center is developing service level agreements so that there's clear communication between the client and providers on what the expectations are. So our service level agreements have defined roles and responsibilities, defined activities within those roles, the requirements and expectations that we're holding each other to on both the client and the provider, and performance measures. So we're going to go over a few examples and like parts of ours. This is very similar to some of you have that OSP pact agreement. This is similar, but we're just doing it as the department and the service center. So this is an example of our service level agreement, mainly proposals. So as you can see, it lists all the activities that we provide as a part of that proposal process. And then we have the ownership of it. Some of them are the service center. Some of them are the PI or the center. Some of them are both, like bio sketches. It's their responsibility, but we review it and things like that. The next example is our measures. So how well we're doing, how well the client's doing. So we have some things like proposals submitted on time. We want that to be 100%. And that's on the client to provide it to us. Some of it is on time to OSP, Obviously, that's not always feasible, right? Because PIs give it to us last minute. So that's 75%. So we have these measures so that we're making sure that we're meeting our goals and that they're meeting their goals and everyone's happy with service. We also provide them with a proposal deadline timeline, which is like the optimal thing, because as you all know, we never get proposals on time. But we ask for them 30 days in advance to get notice at least, hopefully 60, but you know, that never happens again. We also ask them to get us all final budget and admin components 2 weeks before the deadline. So that gives us time to do reviews, because within the Service Center, we also have a review process of all proposals that we submit before they go to OSP. And then we have the 1 week where they give us the final technical components and we do the OSP review. And having PIs see this visual is really helpful. We also have a service level escalation process. So when you are not meeting those metrics, so say we're not meeting the 75% to OSP on time, we have a certain flow where people can then escalate it. So it starts with their research administrator, where that's their day-to-day, I have this issue on my project. And then if their research administrator is not meeting their needs, they then go to the team lead. If the team lead can't address their issues satisfactorily, they go to the director of research services, or Yana. And then hopefully, I think this has happened like once or twice, they'll go to the senior vice chancellor for research, or associate vice chancellor for research. And nothing has gone to VCR yet. It has stopped there. So part of what we do, again, is provide consistent tools across our entire team. These tools include post-award being our razor. This is a tool that some people on campus outside of the Service Center are also using, but it's a workflow tool to help us manage any requests from a PI. So it greatly reduces our email where they're sending us, hey, I have this voucher or this invoice, do it. Instead, they have a place, which, you know, that's how they talk, right? They go to a portal in a website and they will click on a link and it tells them all of the things that they need to set up a vendor, to submit the invoice, and then they submit it to us. Our RAs approve it, and then our research operators process. We also have a SEP, which is salary and expense projection tool. I should have probably put that in there, but it helps us manage personnel effort. So as you all know, a big thing with research admin is managing faculty's effort. So this allows us to look at salary effort at 100% for every fiscal year, as well as identify gaps in overages and service, or excuse me, effort. And it does help with ESERC management to ensure that we're reviewing ESER appropriately. Yes, and forecasting. And then we also have a standard report that we issue for all of our contracts and grants. Outside, it's an Excel-based report, but it's a template that everyone has access to in our Service Center. And all PIs now are accustomed to seeing those reports, and it's standard. So if they work with one center and then happen to work with another, they'll see that same report. We have pre-award tools, budget templates. As you all know, you probably have your own, but we have one that we've kind of hashed out in the beginning of the Service Center to meet the needs of most every type of contract. We have justification templates and checklists for the different type of sponsors and awards. Our communication tools, we rely heavily on OneDrive. That's our storage, but we also use it to communicate reports to PIs. So they are constantly in there. It is a online SharePoint. We all have access to it at UNC, but PIs can go in there, look at their reports at midnight when they decide they're not tired and want to access their reports. You're not having to email them a report. They can go directly in there. They are kept real time. Because our reporting function has projections, we can project any expense, even if it's going to happen in the future. and they can see that in their OneDrive reports. It also has their awards, anything that they need, and we need to maintain that communication with them. We also utilize teams amongst ourselves. So we use team groups and team channels, as well as teaming PIs. And then lastly, we have our institutional tools that we use, like RAM Tracker, which everyone, like I go in it all the time. We have InfoPort, which is a reporting function, as well as RAM reports. Another big thing that we wanted to have with the service center is onboarding and training processes. Excuse me. So part of our onboarding process is making sure, oh my gosh, making sure we have equipment immediately available as soon as that person comes on board. So they're not waiting 2 weeks for a laptop for them to start working after they've been hired. We also have a team of trainers. So we have trainer for ROs, trainer for research admin, and also subject matter expertise. So people who are building reports, they're going to be providing the trainings for people. And all this is in an established, documented onboarding plan. So when someone comes into the service center, we have a file that we give them that lists out what our expectations are for the next, I think it's 3 weeks, for their first 3 weeks on campus. And with this, we also provide resources. So if they need a link to here, go to this website. This is the CC info where you're going to go to all your training. So all of that is in that plan as well. The trainings that we provide are refreshers. We'll do a training on how to use our report, even though they got it when they onboarded. Every so often, we all might make a mistake here and there, and a refresher is always needed. We also record some of our trainings. So if we're going over our budget template, we'll record it so that the next person comes in, they can go to that recording. Also, I know I do this all the time, but when I'm listening to a training or something, I'll space out a little bit. So if it's recorded, they can then go back and rewatch it, get familiar with the concepts that they might have missed. We also develop SOPs and process documentation. So we have broken down our reporting process so that, again, similar to the recording trainings, they can go and access that and always have that information. And then we have biweekly team meetings. So on my team, we have biweekly meetings on Thursdays where my team can then come and ask questions. We can talk about topics like the study subject incentive changes that have happened or the DSM fee changes so that they can maintain on top of all of the new process developments that are happening across campus. We also have one-on-one meetings with team leads. So with my employees, I have one-on-one meetings with them to individualize that training so they get specific information that they need to do their jobs better. And then obviously, again, services cost money. So in order to develop a cost model, we collected data and determined measurable activity. So the amount of IPF submitted, the dollar amount of expenditures, the number of transactions, things that were measurable and we could extract from InfoPort or Connect Carolina. I can't remember the database we use. So we identified those first and then determined what's reasonable for an RA to accomplish. So obviously, one RA shouldn't be submitting 100 IPFs if they're also doing cradle to grave. That's not functionable. So we determined that 24 IPFs or proposals, on average per year per RA, including post-award management of 1.5 million in expenditures, I think. 2.5, perfect, in direct expenses. So that's the average workload that we have for our RAs. And then that helps us determine how many people we need. So if a department has 48 IPFs and 5 million in direct expenses a year, then they need 2 RAs. We also did that for our research operators. So I can't remember the transactions, like 3,000 transactions a year on average. So if a department has 3,000 fund swaps, they need one research operator to process those fund swells. Our expense calculation that we use to develop our cost model is every RA salary and fringe. We also include operators in that as well, and admin fee, where it comprises, that's the right word, comprises team leads, because we're helping those RAs perform their duties, and directors, as well as some non-personnel, because machines break. Professional development is also a key component of research admin. If our faculty are doing professional development on their end, we should also maintain and keep learning on ourselves. So we include that in our expense calculation. And then our allocation of that cost is a percent of the whole cost. So if you have a center that has 10% of proposals and expenses, they're going to get 10% of our whole costs. And then it's sent out to them. I believe we bill quarterly, where they can pay from whatever funds they want or whatever funds they identify. Most of them use F&A. Yes, any department funds. Obviously, they cannot spend sponsored funds on.
They can.
Oh, right. If it's non-federal, we do sometimes bill our effort in if it's a reduced F&A rate. So that does reduce their cost allocation. So if, for example, one of my team members, Fatima, who's in the room today, she is 25% on a project because it's a reduced project, 26% F&A from the state. So in order to kind of get back to the 55.5%, which it doesn't even make up for it, we add her effort on there to kind of offset some of the cost that we're not getting back from the sponsor. So some of the issues and risks that we've seen is the timely conversion to the standardized project reporting system. If it doesn't happen in a timely fashion, PIs don't know what their budgets look like, or we start spending on budgets that we don't have the money for it. So we try and do, as soon as we onboard a new client, a new department, we try and get them converted to the standardized reporting system as soon as possible. Another thing is timely conversion of, or use of, our salary and expense projection tool, which is that effort planning. If we don't do that, PIs end up on suspense and it's just a nightmare. So we like to move them to that quickly so that we can then see the gaps and overages and hopefully reduce the amount of pads we're doing throughout the life cycle of the award, or excuse me. Yeah. We also train. We're having issues with training, but now we're on board. So that was one of our issues. You want to keep people trained and giving them those reminders, those refreshers and recordings so that they can go back and look at those trainings. Another issue is assessing workload. So you might have people that seem like their portfolio is lower, but maybe they have complex portfolio or a complex sponsor. So there's some nuance that we have to the 224 proposals and the 2.5 million. Like I'm sure I know some of my team, they have complex awards, so it's not 2.5 million because it's the reporting for it is insane. So it wouldn't make sense for them to report, or excuse me, do that much. And we also are always looking at redesigning our processes. So if you don't do that, you know, as we all know, continued improvement, you can always improve. So that's an issue that you don't really want to run into, is just by finding something and sticking with it, because if it's broke, don't fix it, kind of. Don't do that, just because you can always do better. And then some lessons learned that we have as well. So when we did this, OVCR didn't necessarily give all of our clients the option because they just were struggling and they thought that they could do it, but they couldn't. So there was some client resistance. So we've learned that it's easier when the client comes to you and requests service. So we have a lot more success with that now. A lot of clients were concerned about the loss of the personal relationship that they have with their RA. Because we have that one point of contact, it does eliminate that. So the department feels that their research admin is part of their team, even though they're not in the department. Another concern was co-location. So at first we were located with the centers that we served, but it started to become where the centers could then pop in, and they felt like they could do a little bit more dictating of our work. So we removed ourselves from their location and had our own space. So having your own space for a service center is definitely better, because you can then collaborate with your team versus getting like directions from your client.
So pretty cool.
Yeah, and now our team has the option of full remote, so it doesn't really even matter. But this was pre-COVID. So if you are a department that requires on-campus, then your own space for a service center would really be helpful. We were in the beginning struggling with transparency of cost determination, but now our clients are very happy because they see how we developed their costs. We give them everything. This is how much your services cost for this year. This is how we determine that. So be very clear in your communication of how you're determining costs for the service center. Another thing we ran into is trying to onboard clients before we have staff, which is very difficult. You then have people who won't be serving that department busting their butt trying to get the department onboarded. So we've realized now that if we're going to onboard a new client, then we go ahead and staff that, because we know that they're coming. We want to go ahead and get all the staff, and specifically the team lead, so that they can onboard the client, because that's part of our role, is onboarding new clients, as well as managing the clients or the department's relationship, not just the PI. So this kind of is for, the next points are for if you're absorbing departments. So that happened at OVCR. If you're a service center from a school and you're coming collectively, you might absorb some staff from departments. So ensuring you have proper classification, they're going into the proper classification or position. So someone that's only doing voucher submissions won't go to a research administrator position. They'll go to a research operator position. Just be very clear about the skill set of your people you're transferring into the service center. In addition to that is maintaining equity. So as you all know, research administrators across campus are paid from low to very high. It's like, and no one can really tell because we don't have a career band. So when we onboard or transfer in new people, we're very intentional to maintain equity by doing reclassifications, position changes to ensure that they are the same as everyone else on our team, and there's no inequities. Another thing is really determine or define your methods to assess workload among similar positions. Like we did the review ensuring 24 proposals and the expenditure levels, and then edit that depending on the type of sponsors, the difficult PIs. I think in the beginning we did a rating of whether the center was difficult, whether the PI was difficult, the sponsor was difficult, and kind of like, an NIH with an ECPI is a lot different than, I'm thinking of USDA and a specific other award that never leaves my brain. And the PI that like bothers you all the time and has questions and asks the same question. So obviously there's a difference in workload, and we do take that into account. Another thing that we really want to do with the service center is create a clear path for progression for research administrators and research operators. So to do that, what we did is developed a team lead position. So research administrators can then strive to be a team lead. We're also looking into potentially doing some senior research admin positions eventually to give people another stepping stone in between a team lead and a research admin. And then as much time as you think it takes to train someone, double it. So it's always going to take extra time to train people and onboard clients. You think it's going to be easy, it probably won't. They'll get it eventually. They'll get to where it's easy, but in the beginning, it's going to be a little frustrating. So just plan for that when you're onboarding clients and new employees. And now I'm going to stop talking for a minute and let you all ask questions if you have any.
We do have actually quite a few questions.
Awesome.
Webinar, but also wanted to give an opportunity for the first question for those of you in the audience.
Go ahead, Ben.
You talked about like the number of transactions. How do you track that without the I mean, every quarter you're charging clients for whatever amount of business. How is that calculated? Is it a manual calculation? Do you guys have like a software?
So Ben's question is, just for the people online, is how to determine the cost and transaction quantity for the invoicing that we do to the clients. Is that kind of? Of course, yeah. So yeah, that's Yana as the director. She does that.
Right. So we decided not to do it quarterly. We do it based on the previous fiscal year, and we work with ORIS system people to pull from different systems, which is including data warehouse, Connect Carolina, Razor. Because, for example, P-card receipts don't come through any of these systems. We have to use Razor internal too. But majority of the transactions come from data warehouse. So we have a report that ORIS created for us, we download, which is very detailed, and then we can break it out in its macros in Excel. It's not any fancy system, it's Excel.
Yeah, it's an Excel based on previous fiscal years, and the sources of the data is vast. So a lot of it's Connect Carolina data through data warehouse and Razor. But Yana does the invoicing, and it is based on previous fiscal year.
And it's actually macros in Excel, it's actually performing the calculation.
Exactly.
Here,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so for one of the virtual questions, how do you keep up with sponsor requirements and especially with ever-changing policies and practices? Are you also structured with RAs that are specialized to support certain software?
So our RAs are specialized with the department they serve and the PIs they serve. Typically, PIs have a type of sponsor that they go for. For instance, one of the centers that I manage, Highway Safety Research Center, they do a lot of FHWA, which is Federal Highway Administration, or NCDOT. So it depends on the PI, and they are somewhat specialized, but they're more department specific, similar to the way that OSP is set up.
And so this is a longer question, but we find that budgeting or re-budgeting can be a real challenge. And oftentimes we find that it's too late that either we have underspent or we have overspent. You mentioned that you use some tools. How often do you run reports for PIs so that they understand their level of spending and in general just to manage the spend?
Great question. So our reports, we reconcile monthly. Our projections, we put in reports daily. So as a transaction comes to us, so say there's a new subcontract invoice, we go ahead and enter that invoice in our projections on our report. When we reconcile, we'll move that from projected to actuals, but the report is maintained consistently. So there's always real-time information for the PI to access on balances. If we have concerns in our reconciliation review, we will then notify the PI. So we'll say, hey, Dr. Joe Blow, your project is looking like it's projected to be overspent by 10,000. Please, let's have a meeting and discuss a spending plan. So that's kind of how we avoid those. And we do the same thing for overages. So if there's $20,000 that they haven't spent and we're 120 days out, that's one of our RAs will reach out to the PI and say, hey, listen, I'm noticing that you're not going to be spending this. Is there a reason? Is there a plan that maybe you haven't told us about? And we work with the PI directly to alleviate deficits and surpluses.
I'd like to add that, we are meeting with our research teams monthly or bi-monthly to discuss those transactions or those overages and deficits. So we may forecast one thing based off of what they submit in Razor, but it could be put in by mistake. So it helps us with a lot of cleanup and JE so that we're not submitting a lot of retro action, especially when it comes to forecasting.
Yeah,
As well.
our RAs we ask them to meet quarterly with their PIs. So there's always interaction with PIs. There's never a moment where they go a year without talking, unless the PI really doesn't want to meet, which does happen. But if there's concerns, we're going to force them to talk to us. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, our RAs don't do any transactions unless it's urgent. So if there's an urgent PAT that needs to post before the KK date, an RA will jump in because we all are trained on how to do it, but our operators process everything. Operators are assigned by department. So that way, if there's 2 RAs serving this department, they have one operator to go to, and that operator specializes in that department. So that's how we assign our people who are processing. So I also did not repeat the question, Amanda. I'm sorry. Our ROs don't do travel to finish because we make our PIs use Concur. We review, but we don't enter their expense reports because they have to go in and sign it anyway. So we ask them to do it, or they have a research assistant that can do it for them. But we want them to own a lot of that process to hold the PI accountable.
That actually segues really well into another question here, and it was really great to hear about how much training that you all do. What about for PI?
Oh, that's a great question. And we probably should do better about that. Yeah, we try and maintain PI relationships well. And if we see that they're missing something, we do try and explain it to them. Whether that sinks in, we can't control that. We have some trainings that we do for centers. So PIs join the center training where we go over our budgets and say, this is our budget template. When you get this from us, this is what it's going to look like. This is how we play around with it. So they have some trainings, but I know that we're going to have more to come with our PI trainings. You're good. Of course. So the question is, what tools do we use to maintain budget reporting to PIs? So our tool that we use is a spreadsheet that we got from School of Medicine that we revamped. This was years ago. And it has a lot of automated fields using embedded if statements, but it is an Excel spreadsheet. with forecasting tabs as well as actual information that then feeds into a summary page where PIs can access just that summary page. Every month, we download transactions from Infoport and put them in the Excel and then reconcile. So far, it works as long as we maintain it. So we part of that process of having standardized reports is we have a person to maintain those templates. So when changes happen, like the DSM fee that we need to start projecting for, we have someone that can put that in the reports. Or if a fringe rate changes or something, someone maintains that so that it's always updated. And if it breaks, there's someone to fix it. So it sounds like that's not going to help your situation because you're lacking resources, but if you can get more resources, that would be great. Oh, right. There is an initiative across campus that we're a part of to have a wiki page, UNC wiki page, where it's onion access, where there should be tools there for you. It might be our tools, might not, we don't know yet. It's still in the development phase, but there'll be one resource where you can go for suggested tools like budget reporting, proposal development, budget templates, things like that. It's not there yet. It's just in talks. We literally just had one meeting so far. So I don't know when it's going to happen. I think they were saying something towards the end of the year, but as UNC, y'all all know, it moves slowly. So don't hold your breath. But when it is out, it will be shared campus-wide.
So we involved OVCR, OSP, and first School of Medicine Service Center. But if you're interested, email us and we'll connect with the leadership. Yeah. Thank you for expressing interest. We're trying to find the ideal spreadsheet that can be as a master template campus. So,
and there's also initiatives campus-wide to eventually have RAM reports be that system. But for now, RAM reports excludes projections. And that's one of the integral things that we need as research administrators to send to our PIs of, this is your projections, and not just like, these are your expenses and this is your budget. Because then they think they have $1 million and they have 10. So that's coming eventually. And again, that isn't even a discussion yet, but I know that it's on like the whiteboard as an idea. Yeah. Sure.
One is you have your budget to guide all of their grants in one of the separate project. And then also, do you allow you guys to have free access to them, or just
great question?
they get a version that they can look at and mess with if you have one that they can touch?
Great question. So the question is, do we have our budget reporting, all PI's projects in one file? And do they have access to edit that file? The answer about editing, no, absolutely not. We do not allow PIs to edit. They only have view access to their OneDrive. So OneDrive allows you the option to do view only or edit access. We do view only for everyone that's not in the service center, because we don't want anyone outside of our service center changing files. The reporting, though, is by project. So if you have a PI that wants to meet across all their projects, you do have to open each report.
Yeah, no,
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
actually, you have two more questions.
Awesome.
This might be more for you, but how often do you evaluate your rate? For instance, if you need to bring on more than just a direct research administrator to support a department or unit, do you automatically reevaluate rates and spread the costs, or do it periodically? So for instance, when you need to hire a new team lead or other support professionals, how does that impact the direct cost?
Good question. We used to do it since we built departments at the end of the quarter, we used to do it quarterly, but then realized too much movement and too much explanation to leadership each month. So now we do it based on the previous fiscal year, knowing if we onboard a new department, obviously may pick up some costs upfront, but we'll kind of collect them later on as we average out the whole cost model. So OVCR takes a lot of some startup costs. And Angie Jones is okay with that, and they sometimes we will give discounts for the rates we charge. So the best practice from our experience, do it based on the whole previous fiscal year, not quarterly. Even though we bill quarterly at the end of each quarter, just in case one of the department departure, we don't want to use them upfront, or we don't want to wait whole year to use them. So what if they run out of department funds? So we do it quarterly to minimize the risks, but they know upfront what will be the quarterly amount.
We have just a few minutes left. Are there any other audience questions?
Thank you all for joining us.